Every story has its moment, one split second when everything changes. For some people, it comes gently like a breeze. For others, it crashes down like a thunderstorm. But in the story you're about to read, the moment arrives with the force of a freight train and the fists of a legend. This isn't just another tale about a bully picking the wrong target. No, this is a story about pride, arrogance, humiliation, and the shocking twist that left an entire bus frozen in disbelief. It's about a boy who thought he was untouchable, the kind of kid who strutted through life believing nobody could ever put him in his place. And maybe, just maybe, he would have gotten away with it if he hadn't stolen the seat of the last person on earth anyone should ever provoke. Because sometimes life has a sense of humor, sometimes fate decides to teach a lesson in the most unexpected way, and sometimes that stranger on the bus turns out to be Mike Tyson, the heavyweight king, the undisputed nightmare of anyone dumb enough to test him. Settle in, because the first moment of this story will grab you, and the last moment will leave you breathless. The bus was packed that afternoon, sweaty, noisy, and moving with the slow frustration of city traffic. People squeezed shoulder to shoulder, wishing they were anywhere else. Among them was Darren Cole, a 19-year-old with a reputation that stretched across 3 neighborhoods. Lean, loud, mean, and convinced he ruled the streets, Darren loved making scenes. He lived for attention, specifically the wrong kind. That day, Darren's ego walked onto the bus 10 minutes before his body. He scanned the seats, saw none open, and scoffed. "Man, I'm not standing," he muttered, loud enough for half the bus to hear. His eyes locked onto a seat near the middle, occupied by a man with a black hoodie pulled low, headphones on, and arms folded. He looked calm, peaceful even. Darren grinned. Easy target. He stomped forward, planted his foot beside the man, and barked, "Hey up, move." The man didn't react. Not a flinch, not a glance. Darren's grin widened. He loved it when people ignored him. It meant he could put on a show. "Yo, you hearing me?" He slapped the stranger's shoulder. Slowly, the man lifted his head. For the first time, Darren got a good look at him. Broad shoulders, thick neck, a face partly hidden by the hood. But his eyes, those eyes were ancient, dangerous. Calm the way a predator is calm. The man simply said, "I'm listening to something right now." Darren laughed. "Well, listen to this. You're in my seat." The bus grew quiet. People shifted, exchanging nervous glances. They knew this kid. They knew his temper. And they knew whoever sat there was about to have a miserable day. But the man didn't argue. He just nodded and said, "All right," in a soft voice. Then calmly as a monk, he stood up. Darren collapsed into the seat with a dramatic sigh. "That's more like it." But the second Darren got comfortable, someone else, an elderly woman, walked onto the bus. The stranger with the hoodie stepped aside to let her pass, then offered her the seat Darren had stolen. Before Darren could protest, she smiled, thanked him, and sat down. Now Darren was standing again, and the stranger, he just returned to leaning against a pole, headphones back on, peaceful as before. Darren's pride sizzled like oil in a pan. "What was that about?" Darren snapped at him. "You think you're funny?" No answer. "You trying to embarrass me?" Still nothing. A few passengers held their breath. They didn't know who the man was, but they knew Darren was about to explode. "You got a problem with me?" Darren pressed, stepping close. "Say something." The stranger slowly removed one headphone. "I don't have a problem with you," he said, "but you seem like you have a problem with yourself." The bus let out a collective, "Ooh." Darren's face twisted. And this was the moment everything began to shift. "Say that again," Darren demanded. "I said," the man repeated gently, "your anger isn't about me. It's about whatever's going on in here." He tapped Darren's forehead. Darren shoved him. "Don't talk like you know me," a passenger softly whispered. "Oh my God, this kid has no idea." But Darren didn't notice. He was too busy shoving, threatening, puffing up his chest. The man finally pushed back his hood. Gasps, whispers, eyes widening everywhere. One person mouthed, "No freaking way." Darren stepped back one tiny step. What you looking at me like that for?" The stranger didn't answer. He didn't have to. Everyone on that bus knew the face staring back at Darren. Square jaw, familiar tattoo, a presence that felt heavy, unstoppable, legendary. Mike Tyson, Iron Mike, the baddest man on the planet, the heavyweight who ended careers with a single punch. Half the bus froze. The other half silently prayed for the boy. "And Darren?" Darren's bravado cracked so fast it was practically audible. He swallowed. His eyes darted around. His voice shrank. Wait, you're Mike Tyson? Mike gave the smallest nod. Darren laughed nervously. Nah, man. You ain't. But Mike raised an eyebrow. A simple, slow eyebrow. The laugh died in Darren's throat. Mike Tyson, calm, patient, almost gentle, adjusted his headphones and said, "Go sit down." The way he said it wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It didn't need to be. It was a command carved from stone. Darren obeyed instantly, not to the stolen seat. He didn't dare approach the old lady now. He scrambled to the farthest empty spot he could find, shrinking into it, wishing the earth would swallow him. The passengers tried not to laugh, but a few snickers escaped. Mike Tyson just closed his eyes and continued listening to his audio. But Darren wasn't done humiliating himself. Fear had replaced arrogance, and fear made him clumsy. He started fidgeting, tapping his leg, glancing at Mike every few seconds, terrified of eye contact. Then, still jittery, he leaned back, too far. His seat flipped. Darren's leg shot into the air. He slammed to the floor with a loud bam. The whole bus erupted in laughter. Even Mike Tyson opened his eyes, just long enough to give a tiny, amused smirk. That smirk burned Darren's soul. He scrambled up, face red as fire, trying to act like nothing happened. But the universe wasn't finished with him yet. At the next stop, a group of school kids boarded the bus. Tyson fans, real fans. The kind who wore boxing gloves printed on their backpacks. The moment they saw him, they screamed, "Micah Tyson!" They crowded him, asking questions, begging for photos, laughing, cheering. Darren sat there, humiliated. 5 minutes ago, he thought he was the king of the bus. Now he wasn't even a footnote. But the worst moment came when one of the kids said loudly, "Hey, Mr. Tyson, who's that guy over there who kept yelling at you?" All eyes turned to Darren. Mike looked at him gently, almost with pity, and said, "Just someone who needed to learn something today." And Darren felt it. Those words hit harder than any punch Tyson ever threw. The bus rolled on, and the lesson had only just begun. But the real mistake Darren was about to make, that's coming next, because he was about to do something so unbelievably stupid, it would change everything. The moment Darren stepped off the bus, he thought the nightmare was over. His cheeks still burned with humiliation. The laughter, the stares, the kids chanting Mike Tyson's name. It played on repeat in his head like a curse. He tugged up his hoodie and shoved his hands deep into his pockets, desperate to disappear. But fate wasn't done with him, not even close. Because Darren made a decision that would turn a stupid mistake into a catastrophe. A decision born from embarrassment, bruised ego, and pure stupidity. He turned around. He decided to follow Mike Tyson. Tyson walked calmly down the street, unbothered, carrying nothing but a small duffel bag and peace in his stride. Darren trailed behind, muttering to himself, Nah, I can't let it end like that. He made me look like a clown in front of everybody. I gotta do something." "What are you gonna do, genius?" his inner voice whispered back. He ignored it. Darren wasn't thinking straight. He wasn't even thinking at all. All he could see was the humiliation replaying in front of the entire bus. The fall, the snickers, the kids pointing at him, the old lady smiling at Tyson like he was a saint, and above it all, Tyson's calm voice, "Just someone who needed to learn something today." Darren clenched his fists. I ain't nobody's lesson. He followed Tyson into a small neighborhood park, quiet, empty, with long shadows stretching across the ground. Mike walked toward a bench shaded by a tall oak tree. Darren quickened his step. This was it. Mike Tyson sat down, stretched his shoulders, and let out a relaxed breath. The calm of the park washed over him until he felt another presence nearby. Mike looked up. His face didn't change, not even a little. "You followed me," he said. Not a question, a statement. Darren froze. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. I want to talk to you," Darren stammered. Mike tilted his head. "No, you don't. You want something else?" Darren swallowed. Tyson tapped the bench beside him. "Sit." The command was impossible to refuse. Darren sat, awkward, stiff, like a soldier awaiting punishment. Mike studied him with quiet eyes. Not angry, not threatening, just seeing through him. "Why are you still angry?" Mike asked softly. Darren snapped, "Because you embarrassed me." Mike shook his head. "No, you embarrassed yourself. I just happened to be there." That hit Darren like a punch to the ribs. He opened his mouth to argue, but Mike lifted a hand, barely, and Darren's voice died instantly. Mike leaned forward. Look at your hands, he said. Darren blinked. What? They're shaking. Darren glanced down, and he was right. His hands were trembling. You're not mad, Mike said. You're scared. Darren felt his chest tighten. Tyson continued. You've been angry for so long, you forgot what fear feels like. The second you felt it, you didn't know how to act. Darren looked away, ashamed, but Mike wasn't done. You think strength is about how loud you yell or how much space you take up, but real strength, he tapped his chest. Real strength comes from knowing who you are, and you don't know. The park felt colder. Darren's bravado cracked again, but this time it wasn't because he feared Tyson. It was because Tyson was right. Why you talking like that? Darren whispered. Why you acting like you care? Mike smiled, one of those soft, sad smiles. Because when I look at you, I see who I used to be. Silence. Wind rustled the leaves above them. Darren looked up slowly. You? Like me? Mike nodded. Angry, lost, thinking the whole world owed me something, thinking intimidation made me powerful. He looked Darren dead in the eyes. It didn't. It made me weak. Darren inhaled sharply. He wasn't expecting this. He wasn't ready for this. He had followed Tyson for a fight, but instead he was getting something far worse. Truth. After a long pause, Darren blurted, I ain't weak. Mike didn't smile. He didn't argue. He just asked, so why'd you try to fight a man you didn't know in front of a bus full of people just because he wouldn't give you his seat? Darren had no answer. Exactly, Mike said. Darren felt sweat on his forehead. His throat tightened. Then embarrassment shifted into something more dangerous. Shame turned into anger. You think you're better than me, Darren spat. Mike raised a brow. I think I'm older than you, that's all. But Darren stood up. Nah. I know guys like you. You think you can lecture me just because you're Mike Tyson? Mike leaned back slightly, calm, almost amused. You want to hit me, Mike said. Go ahead. The wind stopped. The birds went silent and the tree stood still as if anticipating what would happen next. Darren's heart raced, unsure whether it was fear or adrenaline driving him. His fists clenched tighter and he whispered, oh God, without knowing why. Mike rose from the bench, his movements calm and deliberate like a mountain slowly emerging from the ground. He stepped closer. Darren felt the air change, heavy, pressured, thick with something ancient. Tyson was not angry. He was simply present, and that alone was terrifying. Before you do anything, Mike said, think carefully. Darren's breathing grew rapid. You swing at me, your life changes. One punch, one mistake, 1 second you can't take back. Darren's jaw clenched. He could hear the blood rushing in his ears. He remembered the bus, the humiliation, the laughter, and then he swung a wild, stupid, desperate punch. He didn't even see what happened next. One moment his fist was flying. The next it was gone, stopped, frozen midair, caught in Tyson's hand like a child's toy. Darren gasped. Tyson didn't squeeze. He didn't twist. He didn't retaliate. He just held the fist gently and asked one question. Are you finished? Darren's legs buckled. His voice cracked. I don't know why I hit you. Yes, you do, Mike said gently. Because being angry is easier than being honest. Darren collapsed to his knees. He wasn't crying, not fully, but tears gathered at the corners of his eyes. I ain't got nobody, Darren whispered. Nobody teaches me nothing. Nobody shows me nothing. Everybody thinks I'm just a joke or a problem. Mike knelt down in front of him. You're not a joke, he said. You're not a problem. You're just a kid who's hurting. The words broke something deep inside Darren. This was the moment the bully stopped being a bully and became a boy. For the first time in years, he felt seen. He felt human. And Tyson didn't judge him, didn't mock him, didn't strike him. He placed a steady hand on Darren's shoulder. You can be better, Mike said softly, but only if you choose to be. Darren looked at him through wet eyes. Why you helping me? Mike sighed. Because once upon a time, someone helped me. They sat on the bench for a long time. Tyson talked about discipline, control, anger, fear, and the war inside a man's heart. Darren listened, not because he had to, but because for the first time he wanted to. He felt something he hadn't felt in years. Guidance. When they finally stood up, Darren said, I'm sorry about the seat, about everything. Mike shook his hand. You're forgiven. Darren nodded, wiping his face. I want to change. Then start today, Tyson said. Start small. Darren took a deep breath. Can I ask one favor? Mike chuckled. Depends. Can I get a picture with you? Tyson grinned. Only if you promise not to steal my seat again. Darren laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a long time. They took the photo, two men, two different worlds, one moment that changed everything. As Darren walked away, he felt lighter, freer, and for once, he didn't need power. He didn't need attention. He didn't need fear. He just needed to be better. And that is how a bully stealing Mike Tyson's bus seat turned into the greatest mistake and the greatest lesson of his life. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful, emotional, and unforgettable stories.